Good evening, everyone, and
Good evening.
welcome to tonight's class, Parshas Naso. I'm sorry for the delay, just dealing with some chesed shalemis with a Jew in Ecuador, but Baruch Hashem, everything is taken care of, so we could go and learn the Parsha of the week. So this Parsha is Parshas Naso. That's been last Shabbat, we didn't have a reading. Parshas Naso is the Parsha that we usually read around Shavuot. And there's a lot of interesting facts in Parshas Naso. But Parshas Naso mainly is dealing with two interesting halachas. It begins with the laws of Sotah, a woman who goes astray. The word Sotah means deviates. She deviates from her husband, and she finds herself, while she's married, she's having relationships with someone else. The husband is suspicious, and he warns her not to go with the other person. And then finally he finds out that she actually did go with the other person. He has witnesses. Now we don't know if a sin was performed or not. So the woman is being taken to the temple, and there was a whole ceremony of taking water from the altar, from the urn, from the kior, mixed with sand from the earth of the tabernacle, of the temple. They write a whole scroll with God's name on a scroll, and it's being erased. And the woman is drinking that water, and that's called the testing water. And when she drinks the water, if she performed the sin, then what's going to happen is her body starts deteriorating and she dies. And if she didn't perform the sin, then the opposite happens. A lot of good things happen to this woman. This is called the Sota. And some of you know about it, you learned it. Then the next thing in the Parsha is Parsha of Nazir. Nazir means a Nazirite in English. This is a person who makes a commitment to be holy to God, and he does not drink, makes a commitment not to drink wine. He makes a commitment not to get in contact with anything that has to do with the defilement of spiritual impurity. And the minimum amount of time is 30 days, and a person could choose how long he wants to be a Nazirite. And at the end of that 30 days, at the end of the season that he decided to be a Nazirite, this is when he brings a special offering and he cuts his hair. Part of the things of being a Nazirite is letting your hair grow long. So he has to cut his hair when that season comes to an end. And he ends his season of being a Nazirite. Today's class, there is other parts of the Parsha. The Parsha gives us the priestly blessing that we all recite every day, the blessing that the priests are blessing the Jewish people. And then the majority of the end of the Parsha talks about the offerings that the Nesi'im, the leaders in the Jewish people, brought on the days of the inauguration, from the first day till the 12th day. Every day there was a Nasi, there was a leader of the Jewish people who brought an offering for the temple. Today's title of tonight's class is Overcoming Folly. In simplistic English means overcoming stupidity, overcoming mishigas. And the reason why I chose the topic to discuss today is because it caught my mind learning the Parsha of Saita. It caught my mind this idea, the name that this woman receives, a very interesting name, that for performing an act of adultery, the Torah calls her with the name Sotah. Sotah means a word that means deviating, but the word Sotah also comes from the word, if you read it in the Hebrew letters, it reads as Shotah, someone who is foolish, someone who is suddenly becomes Meshuggah, someone who kind of like goes crazy. Now, I just completed learning the Tractate of Sota. Every year, between Pesach and Shavuos, we learn every day a page of Talmud in the Tractate of Sota. It has 49 pages, and there's 49 days between Pesach and Shavuos. So every day I learned a page. So I just made a siyum on Shavuos. I completed a tractate in the Talmud that teaches us the laws regarding the Sota. So the class tonight will be some type of a siyum celebration, discussing something about the laws of Sota and the idea of a Sota, and we'll consider that as a mesibat siyum, as a form of completing a tractate in Talmud that we know customary, that when you complete a tractate in Talmud, you have to make a celebration. So that will be our celebration, tonight's class.
Good.
The reason why we study the tractate of Sota, I mean, there's other tractates in Talmud that have 49 pages as well. Tractate of Shavuos, Shavuot, that deals with promises and oath that people are doing at a court. The reason why we study precisely the tractate of Sota is because there's a similarity between the Sota and the Omer. The Omer offering and the Sota brings an offering when she comes to the tabernacle. This is the only offering that is made out of barley. The Omer was barley, the Omer offering, and the Sota's offering was also barley. Now, the Talmud explains why, and we see it in Rashi also of this week's Parshah, why does she bring an offering made out of barley? Is the Talmud says the difference between wheat and barley is the wheat is food of a human being. Barley is food of an animal. And the Talmud says that since she did an animalistic act, she should bring an offering that is animal food. Now, why is the Omer brought from the animal? And this already we have other explanations, is because the 49 days of the Omer that we just completed in the holiday of Shavuot is the 49 days of purification. We are purifying the 49 faculties of our animalistic soul. And we basically, when we're done with the purification of our animalistic soul, we become ready for the receiving of the Torah. So because of this similarity between the Omer offering and the Sota offering, this is why we study the tractate of Sota every day. I studied a page, and I was lucky to have Menachem at home because of this terrible disease, this corona, so they had to close down his yeshiva. So I had the privilege to have my son with me, and every day, every night, actually, we used to sit down after counting of the Omer, and we spent 45 minutes to an hour learning the page of Sota. It was very, very geschmack, very uplifting. And actually, I miss it. The last couple of days, we didn't study anything together. It was very special to have this time of studying together something. I'll open up with a little anecdote. There was this guy who used to show up to the border. This young guy used to show up with the border with a bicycle. And attached to the bicycle, there was a wagon full of dirt. And the border patrol stops him. And he obviously knows that probably in this wagon of the dirt, something is hiding. He starts digging around. He sees nothing. Fine, he lets him through. The following day, the guy again comes to the border. This time again, he has a wagon with dirt behind him. This time, the border patrol guy takes turns over the wagon, empties out all the sand, looks through it, sifts through it. There is nothing inside, lets him through. The third day, he sees him doing it again. He stops him. He says, "Could you tell me what exactly you're going through every day? What are you smuggling through? What's in the sand that you're bringing it over every day?" He says, "It's nothing in the sand. I just smuggle bicycles." So our life is just one big smuggling through. From morning till night, we are busy dealing with the biggest smuggler that exists. And the biggest smuggler that exists is our evil inclination. A person wakes up in the morning with the greatest plans, and many of us know you wake up in the morning with the greatest ideas, full with excitement, full with, happy to go do some special things. Goes through 2 hours from when you wake up, and suddenly you look at yourself and you say, what happened to all my great plans and all my great motivation? Now, every 2 months, we are aware of another event that happens in the news where this great person who built a big career and did some incredible things, boom, comes crashing down and nothing is left from him. Sometimes it's a politician, sometimes it's a private entrepreneur. One mistake, one little mistake, the guy touched someone, the guy said something, and within a couple hours, the person is smothered all over the media, destroyed, denigrated, destroyed for the most little act, for the most simplistic stupidity that he did. The person's entire life, we could witness a suicide done live in front of all mankind. And this question always comes up. This is a question from the beginning of humanity. Since the time of Adam and Chava eating from the tree of knowledge, how do intelligent people, spiritual people, big people, highly ethical people, how do they fall into such a pattern of self-destruction? Where is the brains? Where is the brains in that time? What happens to the person? What happens to him? Where is that intelligent? Where is the Torah that he learned? What is the Yetzer Hara? What is this evil inclination telling to that person in that moment that causes him to forget everything he learned, everything he davened, everything he invested his time and effort, everything the person ever imagined that he knew, boom, out the window, destroyed, broken to pieces. Nothing is left from that. Now, this is a very critical conversation to have. This is very, very critical because if we know the enemy, and we know how he operates, we could highlight what was done wrong. And in the moment this comes up, we know to be careful about that. We know to stay away from that. Now, the point of today's class, this is a very important class. Those of you who are here and listening to this, this is probably the most important class I've given in a very long time. Because today's class, I'm going to talk about something really simply practical that we all, each and every one of us, it's relevant to each and every one of us, everyone. How do we make the difference between a life of self-actualization, spiritual growth, and a life of total destruction and pain that comes after that? And I want to take the sota. I want to use the example of this woman who has a life and she's married and she goes and she destroys everything she has, all the way to have a public destruction, drinking the water in the temple, in the house of God. And in front of the whole world, she's being known as a curse. Amayim amorarim, the bitter water goes into her. And she explodes and she gets destroyed, and everybody knows how terrible she was. How does a person reach such a level? The Talmud, right in the beginning of the tractate of Sota, the Talmud right away touches on the name. Why is she called with the name Sota? And the Talmud says that the name Sota comes from the Hebrew word shtut. Shtuyot. Those of you who know Hebrew know the word shtut and shtuyot. And the Talmud says this word, I'll say it in Hebrew and I'll translate. Ein Adam over avera, ela in kein nichnas bo ruach shtut. A human being does not do an act of sin unless a spirit of folly, foolishness, goes into him. Now, the word shota or sota could mean deviating from the right path, but more essentially, the way the Talmud points it out, is something foolish happens to the person at the moment of that sin. Now, we need to analyze this because the last description for a sinner is to say that he's a fool. The description for a sinner should be a sinner, someone who is cynical, a manipulator, a pleasure seeker, a hedonist, someone who is a narcissist. Why is the sinner called a fool? Why are we calling him fool? Why do we call this woman a fool? Calling it fool, calling it foolish, is kind of like okaying, not okaying, but it seems like a little cheap. You say Nebach, this person became foolish, he became crazy, so we got to have pity on them. The word being foolish, the title foolishness on a sinner is it takes away the gravity. It takes away the how grieve and how strong is what the person just did. The right word should be sinner. Why do we call her fool? Why do we give her a name of someone who maybe psychologically, you have to go out to get a psychiatrist to help her out in her situation? Now, some people would say, and came to my mind right away, and you would say, for sure she's a fool. She lost the entire world. Yeah, we say Ezeu Shoter, what's considered a fool? If you want to test someone if he's a fool or not, give him something special and see if he's losing it. If he loses it, he's a fool. This is what the Talmud says. So I understand she lost her husband, she lost her life, she lost all her honor, her dignity. I understand that idea of being a fool, I understand. But this is only the outcome. The outcome will be that she's going to be a fool because she loses everything. But why do we say that what causes a person to do sin is because the person went meshuggah? Now the question becomes even bigger. For those of you who are a little familiar, know that King Solomon has a very special book. It's called Kohelet, Ecclesiastics. Very, very powerful book. Highly recommended to study it, but not just to read it, to study it. It's a book that needs a lot of study. So King Solomon writes in Kohelet, he writes, and I'm just going to quote the verse, he says, Tov yeled misken v'chacham, mimelech zaken v'ksil. It's better to have a poor child from a wise old king and foolish. Asher lo yada lizayirot. And Rashi explains, the Medrash explains, who is he referring to the old foolish king? The old foolish king refers to the king is the evil inclination. The evil inclination is an old foolish king. Why is he called an old foolish king? It's because he comes into the human being's existence at the moment of birth. A person is born, as the verse says, lepetach hatad rovetz, that the sin happens at the womb, meaning to say the child from the moment he's born is already having in him this evil inclination. He cries and he drives the parents crazy and he likes to overeat and he likes to do a lot of stuff from the moment of birth. You could see already there's an evil inclination there. However, the godly inclination, the holy side of the person, only gets activated by his bar mitzvah. So 13 years, you have someone who is ruling your body for 13 years, an old king, and then comes a child. So it sounds like incompatible, the war between the Yetzer Tov and the Yetzer Hara, because the Yetzer Tov only shows up in the bar mitzvah. The Yetzer Hara is there since the moment of birth. But that's not the conversation for now. The conversation for now is, why is Shlomo calling our evil inclination a fool? Now, we said before that we call the sinner a fool. King Solomon calls the evil inclination a fool. The last thing I would call my evil inclination is a fool. The evil inclination is the most cunning, smartest the most biggest chacham that I know is my evil inclination. He knows that it comes from the back door, it comes from the front door, it comes from the window. Those of us who would work a little bit with self-improvement know how sophisticated, how smart is that evil inclination. Now, the Talmud talks about it. The Talmud talks about the evil inclination, and he says how smart he is. He says he comes like a fly. He doesn't let go. It's not like, sometimes something comes your way, you give it a push away, and that's it, it's gone. The evil inclination, the Talmud in Brachot says, he comes from every direction, he doesn't let go of any options. There's a story there was a tzaddik from Meir from Pamishlan. He talks about a person who was drinking. He had a drinking problem. And he tried stopping, those people who are confronted with this addiction know it's not easy to stop. And he really tried stopping. He did everything he can to try stopping drinking. One night he was on the way to the bar and suddenly he grabbed himself and he says, "No, I am not drinking anymore." All his strength, he overcame his inclination, he overcame the desire to drink, and he turned around and he went back home. When he came home, he saw himself in the mirror. He felt so good about his accomplishment. He was able to overcome the desire for drinking. He was so excited about himself. He says, "A person like me deserves a l'chaim." And he went and he took a drink. The Yetzer Hara is very smart. Very, very smart, very wise, very sharp, very sophisticated. He doesn't stop. The Gemara in Shabbos says, this is how a Yetzer Hara works. Today he tells you do this. Tomorrow he tells you do that. Eventually he tells you go and worship idols. The Yetzer Hara starts with small things, very small things. And from the small things, it eventually brings you to do big things. But at the same time, so sophisticated, so smart, so cunning, he constantly smarts out the person. Why do we call him a fool? Why do we call him a fool? Alter Rebbe says in Tanya something very powerful. Alter Rebbe in Tanya talks about the Yetzer Hara. And he says the Yetzer Hara comes with very foolish claims to the person. If the person would have been smart, the person wouldn't be sold to the claims of the Yetzer Hara. What does the Yetzer Hara do? Yetzer Hara comes to the person and he says, and he comes in his ways of doing it, he does it in a very smart way. It's all that comes to the person. And the reason why I want to talk about this, again, I'm leading you to something really special. The point of this class is to know when you are in a situation where you're already trapped into the hands of the Yetzer Hara. Whether you in that situation where that spirit of folly is already dominating you. So you don't forget, so you remember at that moment when it happens, you're able to say, aha, I know this is not okay. I know I'm not going to be confused. The Gemara brings a story, before I tell you about what the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya. The Gemara brings in the tractate of Baba Basra, the Gemara talks about some interesting stories. Each story over there is a metaphor, really. It's stories of a sage. His name was Rabbi Bar Bar Chana. And this Rabbi Bar Bar Chana is having very interesting, fantastic events happening to him, and very mysterious events. It's a whole list of stories. And obviously, each one of those stories is not stories that actually did happen. Each one of those stories are metaphors. metaphors of life. He sees very interesting creatures. He sees islands turning over upside down. He sees a lot of interesting things happen. One of the stories over there in the tractate of Baba Basra, Daf Ayin Gimel, the Gemara says, Rabbi said, the people who Sipru Yorde Ayam, the people who travel in oceans, told me a story. They told me about an event. There is a wave. There is waves in the ocean. There is a wave that wave has the ability, has the strength to tip over the boat. He says that wave, when it's coming towards the boat, it's shining, white fire in its tip. And in order to be saved from that wave, we take special sticks that the names of God are written on it, and we bang against that wave, and this is how we save ourselves. Now, what does it mean? They see a wave, and the wave has a light of white fire on it. So the Mefarshim, the commentaries on the spot, say, Rabbi, the great sage who's telling the story, he had a question. How could the Yetzer Hara, how could our evil inclination be such a strong wave that tips over the entire life of a person? That the entire life of a human being, the big boat, a human being's life in an ocean, meaning to say the human being lives his life with all the events that happen in his life. How could a wave turn over a person? Like we said in the beginning of the class, in 1 second, a person with the greatest honor and the greatest glory and the greatest prestige turns in life into rubble, destroyed, completely finished, nothing left, ashes. How could it be? How could a wave, how does the Yetzer Hara have such power? What did the people tell him? What is Rabbi Baba Chana saying? He says that wave is colored with a beautiful, shiny, white flame. The Yetzer Hara, your evil inclination, when it comes the moment that he wants to flare you with the desire to do something that is wrong, what does the Yetzer Hara do? He colors you what's going to happen now in such beautiful, beautiful colors. He's giving you such a convincing argument at that moment that you think to yourself that this is the right thing for you to do right now. It's not just a war of feeling against your mind. In your mind, you know it's wrong, and your feelings, you know you want to do that. This is mind against mind. The Yetzer Hara puts like a smoke around the person, and he explains to the person, it's good for you. It's not just it's good for you, it's the right thing for you to do right now, is to do this act of sin. Meaning to say, the bad thing is actually a good thing for you right now. Now, this is very difficult. When a person is in a situation where his mind tells him that the bad thing that he knows not to do suddenly becomes the right thing for him to do, then how do you stop that? How do you stop that? Hasidim used to say that in the beginning, the Yetzer Hara looked like a devil. Beginning, the evil inclination by a person, when God created him, he looked scary. You know that image on the bottles from the skull and bones? That's how he looked. And the problem was, people were able to identify him. It was easy to recognize your Yetzer Hara. He was always there. You knew how he looked. You knew what he's going to do. So people stayed away. They never listened to him. What did the Yetzer Hara do? He put on a big yarmulke. He put on a long beard. He had long tzitzis, and even put on a shtreimel on his head, and a long black kapote. He looked like a big chassid and a big rabbi. And he looks like the Yetzer Tov. He looks exactly, he's not anymore looking like a Yetzer Hara. He doesn't look anymore like a devil. Suddenly he's looking like your good side. What does he say? sleep another 2 hours, because if you sleep another 2 hours, you'll be more rested and you'll able to daven with much more kavanah. Is what he says. Now that's makes sense. I slept too little in the night. Getting up now from my bed so early, I'll be exhausted. He tells me, the Yetzer Hara comes and says, I want you to daven, but I want you to daven in 2 hours. Not now. Sleep another 2 hours. You wake up soon, you'll be fresh. Yetzer Hara comes to you in the morning. He says, go look at your cell phone. There is probably a very important message came from your daughter, from your son last night. You have to see this. Obviously, you're going to daven, but you have to go touch the cell phone the moment you open up your eyes in the morning. Now you're going to open up your cell phone. First, you're going to go look for that message, obviously. But then on the way, you're going to find another message. Then you're going to answer. Then you're going to wait for the answer for that. Then you're going to find out that on the news, something really special happened in Israel or happened in somewhere in America. So now what's going to happen next? Could I go out? And suddenly you look at the clock and it's 11 o'clock in the morning. What happened? I woke up at 7. Now it's 11 already. And you think back, he says, it's all here. Woo! What did he do? It was very important. He came with a very important thing. You just need to sleep for another 2 hours. Sometimes we're being asked to give tzedakah. We're being asked to give charity. What does the Yetzer Hara say? If you give charity next week, then you're going to have more money. You're able to give double. Now I could only give you $18. If you wait another month, I'll give you $36. So I'll wait. Now, we all know what happens next month. Next month, something else comes up. But this is what the Yetzer Hara does. He doesn't come to you and says, don't give tzedakah. Don't give the money. He comes and says, give. He knows already. He says, I'm going to give. I want to partner with you. Wait a little bit. Now, the Yetzer Hara comes to this woman, to the Sota. What does he tell her? He says, if you go with this man, you're not going to be lonely anymore. Your husband always travels, is not available. You're being married for so long. Just, you'll have companionship. Not a sin. You're not going to do a sin. You're going to have some companionship. It's going to help you with all the problems in your life. Now, we know this is not something that I'm just using metaphors. The Talmud actually brings it about the story of David and Bathsheba. King David, we all know the story of David and Bathsheba. We don't have to go into the details. The Gemara says that how did Satan able to cause King David to go and take a married woman and do the whole story, that famous sin of King David? So the Talmud says it started with this, that the Yetzer Hara came to King David, that he says, King David, you should have marital relations in the morning. Because if you have marital relations in the morning, then your body is going to be calm, and you're not going to have any temptations a whole day. You're going to see women, you're going to see other people. So it's better to have intercourse first thing in the morning. So like this, you could release all that energy and you'll have a good day. Now, obviously, we know that according to the Torah, a person should only have marital relations at night. But King David listened to that side in him who told him that for his status, and the Talmud says that was his mistake. Because the rule is that part in the body, feeding it is starving it. Meaning to say, more a person learns to control and be in control of his sexuality, more satisfied he is in sexuality. More you express your sexuality, more you let yourself go vulgar and open up, more your inclination becomes stronger and stronger and stronger and stronger. It doesn't get satisfied. And the Talmud says that was his downfall. There is a story with a Rabbi who lived in Ukraine. His name was Rabbi from Chernobyl. Rabbi from Chernobyl was known that he was an incredible, he gave charity in enormous amounts. Like the way he gave charity, no one ever gave charity. And his house was always empty. And the story goes that he had a child that was supposed to get married and he really needed money. And someone came to the door, one of the Hasidim, and the Rebbe's secretary told the Rebbe, the guy who showed up, he said, the Rebbe has to marry his daughter. Maybe you want to give a donation in honor of the Rebbe's child's daughter. And the guy was a rich man and he wrote a check, the full amount, how much it's going to cost the entire wedding. Gave it to the Rebbe. The Rebbe put it in his drawer. He said, this is for your daughter's wedding. You don't give it to anybody. This is not for charity. This is so you can marry your daughter. So the story goes, a couple hours passed by and another Jew showed up and he came into the Nachum and he started crying. He says, I have a daughter. She's going to get married in a couple of weeks. I don't have a nickel. I don't have a ruble to my name. And I need money for the wedding. So the tzaddik took the entire packet of the money, handed over to the person, the money that was supposed to go for his daughter's wedding. He gave it to this guy. He says, go and make a wedding. Oh, the secretary walks in. He says, Rebbe, this was the money that was supposed to go for your daughter's wedding. What did you just do? You gave it all away. So he said, listen, when the guy asked me for money, I decided, yes, why should I give him? I'll give him a little bit. Maybe I could take this money, instead of supporting one wedding, I will support 5 weddings, not just one. It's a lot of money. And when I realized, where does this advice comes from? Who is advising me to divide this money into 5 weddings? I realized it's not my good side. This is not my holy side. I decided, you know what? Take the whole thing and I will figure it out. And the Rebbe writes in Hayom Yom, he says the Yetzer Hara is called Nefesh HaBahamis. In Hasidus, the evil inclination is called the animalistic soul. He says not because he's an animal. Sometimes he comes as a fox, the most sophisticated of all animals. Sometimes he comes dressed up like a tzaddik, a humble person, good inclination. Everyone has a nefesh habahamis. I'm just translating from the Hayom Yom. Everyone has a nefesh habahamis according to his own personality. Suddenly one day you wake up in the morning, you say, oh, I want to learn Hasidus. That's what I want to do. I want to see it and become a Kabbalist. Then there are people who are making a decision, oh, I want to move to Israel. I want to do something special. I want something holy. Says the Rebbe in Hayom Yom, sometimes this comes from your evil inclination. Doesn't come from any holy side in you. As the Yetzer Hara sees that you're finally becoming in a good place spiritually, you're finally settling in a good place in your life, you finally are doing the right thing, you're having influence on people, you're learning, you're davening, you're involved, you're doing a good thing, comes the Yetzer Hara and he says, you know what, let's do something special now. You make aliyah, you'll go live in Israel, you'll be a holy person, you'll live in a koilel, you'll be a special yid, Mashiach is going to come. Not necessarily it comes from a holy side. Not necessarily it comes from a size of Kedusha. It might come from the most darkest places in the person. The Yetzer Hara has a lot of tricks, and he has many ways how to deceive a person to think that he's doing the holiest and the right thing in his life. But then comes what the Alter Rebbe says. The Alter Rebbe says, he has another trick that the Yetzer Hara comes. When the Yetzer Hara sees that he cannot change your mind, he cannot change you to do something evil. What does he do? The Yetzer Hara makes the sin look very minimal, very small. He says, people will understand you. Family will forgive you. You're not really becoming separated from God because of this little act. This is a little mistake. It's forgiven. Now, this is probably what Potiphar's wife tried to do to Joseph. Yeah. She comes to Joseph and she says to him, no one knows. No one is here. There's no other way to do it. That's the only way we can do it. Yeah. So let's just do it. Now, we're going to understand now why he's such a fool. Why is considered so stupid? He puts such a smoke cloud around our mind that we know that that little thing is going to become the greatest tragedy in our life. This act is going to be such a foolish act. There's no such a thing as small mistake. We all know that evil is evil. There's no small mistakes. By the end, you're going to regret every sin that you did. You're going to regret deeply. And it's going to be maybe too late to regret it. And Alter Rebbe says there's no such a thing, a light sin. This whole idea of, and this is just a light sin. Every sin is God saying, no. That's it. And you go and you say, I don't care. So it's not like I did a small sin. I did something that's not, I didn't really go and I did something so bad and I didn't kill anybody. Alter Rebbe says you have to understand, when you are doing something against Hashem's will, you basically took the relationship between you and God and you said goodbye to it. Now, the Alter Rebbe says, look at the reward. Hashem is rewarding for sending away a mother bird from her children. Hashem is rewarding you with longevity, long life, and all the blessings in the world. What is it? I passed by in the street. I saw a nest on a tree in a public property. I send the bird away. I take away the babies, and I'm raising them. And this, I'm going to live a whole life. Doesn't cost me anything. Didn't do anything. Now, if someone sinned, did Chilul Shabbos, desecrated Shabbos. It's considered like he committed idolatry and he severed his relationship with God, and the entire Torah is erased by him. What? I flicked the light off in my room. I turned on the switch. What did I do? There's thousands of people doing it. It's just a random act that I did. Yeah. That moment that you do something like this, you're cutting off your connection from Hashem. What the Yetzer Hara does to the person is he creates an event, an atmosphere in the person's life is that suddenly there is small sin and there is big sin, there is small mitzvahs and there is big mitzvahs. There is no such a thing as small sin. There is no such a thing as small sin. Every mistake, every person you touched, you're going to pay the price for it. Every human being you hurt, every penny you stole, you're going to pay full price for that. There's no such a thing small. Every person that you heard of his crash and downfall is a person who did a small act and he thought it's a small act. How does Yosef say to this woman, to the Potiphar's wife, what does he say? How will I do such a great evil? She's minimizing it. She's telling him it's nothing. A little act. What is it? Garnished. No one is here. No one sees you. No one, you're alone. You're lonely. They just, do something together, small. No one is ever going to find out. What does he say? How will I do something so bad? And the Talmud says, what happened? What held back Yosef? How did Yosef able to pull out when he was already ready to go do the sin? It says that Yosef pulled out. What happened? He saw his father's image. What happened when he saw his father's image? What's so special about seeing Father Yaakov's image? So the Talmud says that Jacob looked like Adam. Yaakov, our patriarch Jacob, his face proplexion looked exactly like Adam, God's first human being that he created. What happened was when he saw his father Jacob, he saw Adam. And he realized that Adam's sin was the same way. What was Adam's sin? Eating from the tree of knowledge, that's it. There was no major violation, desecration, didn't murder anybody, didn't kill anybody. It began with touching the tree, and then eating from the tree brought destruction of himself and all his generations further away. Yosef knew this is not a small act. If you do something against Hashem's will, if you do something against what God wants from you, there is going to be a price you're going to pay. We all know about people who pay a price for the rest of their life for little mistakes like this. that he did to a fellow human being. How much more so when we do it between God? Says the Alter Rebbe, the woman, the Sota, she is so foolish. She's so stupid in that moment, thinking that it's a little sin. If she would have known what happens at that moment of that sin, how her entire relationship between her and God, and later on, the price she's going to pay in humanity, she would have never done that. She would have never, ever even begin to go that direction. It says that when Mashiach is going to come, God is going to slaughter the Yetzer Hara. And the reason why he's going to slaughter the Yetzer Hara, what was the punishment? He was just an angel that was sent to cause people to deviate. He did his mission. And the answer is that he did his mission a little too good. He did his mission a little too good. You know, he made it a little bit more exciting than it is. What would I want to get to? We have 10 minutes left for the class. What do I want to get to? How are we going to make sure that we survive the next temptation that comes our way? There was a guy who was weighing 300 pounds. And every time he tried going on a diet, when he saw a cheesecake, the diet came to an end. He tried every diet, all last until he came in contact with the cheesecake. The moment he came in contact with the cheesecake, there was the end. And finally, he found himself a coach. And that coach is a world-renowned coach. And basically, you have to be in contact with him all the time. And he was putting him on the path. And he managed to get down 80 kilos in a very short period of time. And came one day, the guy comes into a party, and right in front of him lays a table laid out with every cheesecake out there. And he cannot control himself. He feels like he's going to eat up the entire table. And at that hardest moment, he picks up his phone and he calls up the coach and he says, I'm standing in front of a table filled with every cheesecake under the sun, and I'm going crazy. I don't know what to do. This is going to be horrible. The coach told him, listen, I have one idea for you. It's the only way of you survive. I want you to run to the kitchen, take a piece of meat, and eat it. He ran to the kitchen, ate a piece of meat, and now once he ate the piece of meat, he knew that's it. He lost his desire of eating any of the cheese. You have to wait now 6 hours. The moment he realized it's prohibited, all the desire went away. The only way to control our evil inclination is to push him away when he enters. Once he's in, then it's a whole different story. But when he comes in, and when does he come in? It's the first thought that comes to your mind. The first second you feel like the trigger of like, oh, I want to do this. At that moment, you stop right there. You know, in Jewish law, there is laws of yichud. A man is not allowed to be with a woman in one room. Not because he's going to do something that is not okay. It's prevention. Prevention. You know, people read about this vice president, Mike Pence, who he never goes to meetings with any women alone without having another person with him. The laws of yichud, this is laws in the Torah. This is laws of prevention. Take the laws of modesty, it's niyut. It's not about covering women or covering men. As the idea is prevention. If you stop things at an early stage, you're not going to get to the real terrible, horrible things that happens later. That might happen later. And Judaism created a whole system in a halacha. There's a whole system of laws and a whole system of details to create defense, to create a certain barrier that kind of stops things at the early stages, so we don't arrive to the real terrible destruction that could happen at the end. By a person, some people are talking about the sin of talking lashon hara, speaking bad about other people, or speaking gossip. Hasidus doesn't talk about lashon hara, because lashon hara is an outcome. Lashon hara begins with thinking bad about someone else. If you wouldn't think bad about someone else, you wouldn't talk bad about someone else. So the prevention of lashon hara, saying don't talk, it's too late. Your mind is filled with thoughts, you're going to talk. Hasidus teaches us a person has to work on his mind. Keep your mind clean. If your mind will be clean, your mouth will be clean as well. And the same thing is also with all the other sin that exists in our life. It all begins with not guarding our eyes and our ears. It's not about the action. The bad action that you hear about, the person who touches another woman or another man, or the person who touches another person's life, it didn't start there. It begins with a person allowing his eyes to look on what's not supposed to. It begins with a person listening to teachers or to music or to listen to things that he's not supposed to. The mind is filled with all types of negative thoughts. Obviously, when you're filled with that type of stuff, your action already are a result of a whole mindset that was developed through watching movies and watching terrible things. Like today on the internet, some people watch really bad things. You created a whole atmosphere in yourself that the action will automatically happen. You can't even stop them. Hasidus teaches us that we have to take a step back. We have to go back to the gate. We have to go back to the entryway. We have to recognize the evil inclination before he attaches himself to us. By the door, by the entrance, by the thought. If you're going to be taking care on your thought, your speech will be okay. If you're going to take care on your mind, your action will be okay. There's no question if a person's mind is clean, if a person's mind is occupied with learning and ideas and meditation and mindfulness, then he doesn't do terrible things. It just doesn't happen. I want to conclude with a little story that just illustrates everything we learned about. Really think this is very important to learn this idea. There's once a Yid, a Jew, came to the Maggid, to one of the great Hasidic masters. And he was complaining that his mind is constantly fighting evil thoughts. And he doesn't know what to do. He cannot stop thinking bad thoughts. The Maggid advised him he should travel to his chassid. He had a chassid, his name was Leil from Zhitomir. And he says, you go to this chassid and he will teach you exactly how to deal with those thoughts that's in your mind. No, as the Rabbi said, the Yid listened, the chassid listens, and he travels to Zhitomir. He arrives to the town of Zhitomir, it's late at night, and he goes to the house of Reb Ze'ev, the chassid, and he knocks on the door, and nobody answers. Now he could hear from behind the door, he could hear the people are in the house, the light is on, but he's knocking and knocking and knocking and knocking, and no one answers. The night was getting cold. He needed to go into the house. This is Russia, everything gets freezing at night. Started knocking even stronger and stronger and stronger, hoping someone will open up the door. Nobody opens the door. After a long time of waiting, when his feet started freezing already, and he was already about ready to give up completely, even stop knocking. The door opened up, and Reb Wolf was by the door. And he looked at him and he said, I wanted to teach you. Only we decide who will enter our house. Only a human being decides which thought come into his mind, which videos and pictures or images will go into his eyes. A human being has the handles on the door. He can decide what he's going to listen to, what he's not going to listen to. No one has to open the door. No one has to open the door. You could keep the door closed. We're learning from the Parshah of Saita, we're learning how important it is not to fall into the path of foolishness. How important it is to remain alert and awake and aware and full of light to be able to identify any type of ideas that we could able to say to ourselves, we know where it's coming from. We know if it's coming from our holy side, or maybe it's coming from a questionable side in us that is somehow decided to find us at a moment of weakness and take a ride on us. And we see it in every aspect in our life. People make decisions about the future of their marriage at a moment of weakness. People make decisions about the future of their children at a moment of weakness. And we become so confused and so unclear. Is it coming from a holy and good place in me? Or is it coming from a opposite? There's the Yetzer Hara using you, this big smoke machine, to create a fog that we don't know exactly what's the right thing. And somehow we think that sleeping in another 2 hours will help us. Delaying our giving will help us. And that's for this, we need to have a lot of avoda, a lot of personal work, and a lot of inner coaching, working with rabbis and mystics, and really be diligent to able to know where is it a moment of foolishness, or is it a moment of wholesomeness and holiness? God Almighty should bless us that the Ruach HaTumah Min Haaretz, that God Almighty bless us that very soon we'll all see very clearly everything. The moment of clarity will kick in. We'll all do tshuva, we'll all repent, and we'll all come back to God wholeheartedly, coming back from all our deviations, from all our behaviors, and we should be able to grow spiritually, each and every one of us in his own way. Have a wonderful evening. Have a good Shabbos.
Amen.
God bless you all. If anybody wants to ask any questions, feel free to use the.
Thank you, Rabbi. No.
Zago Baruch.
Thank you.
Very nice. Shukar.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good to see you. Good night.